Okay, so you know the story. There's a small group of men in this world. They're the muscular guys, they're the good looking guys, they're popular, confident, and driven. They're the alphas, and anywhere they go, they're just surrounded by women who seem to be genetically programmed to want to sleep with them. But if this doesn't sound like you, it means that you fall into a different category. But whichever archetype actually defines you, be it beta, gamma, delta, you know one thing, and that's that you exist lower on the sociosexual hierarchy than the alphas. So even at your best, you can never hope to compete with an alpha when vying for female sexual attention. But did you ever wonder where the sociosexual hierarchy comes from? You should, because the answer is going to surprise you. You see, the entire concept of alphas and betas actually comes from an immensely misunderstood study of wolves that was performed back in the mid 20th century. The study culminated in the 1970 book aptly titled The Wolf, which became an international bestseller. Now, why would a book about wolf behavior become such a big hit? Well, we'll talk about that a little bit later. For now, just know that the studies that sparked the entire concept of the alpha male and alpha male culture have actually been completely retracted by the author, wildlife biologist David Mech. As it turns out, by only studying captive wolves, Mech did science and by extension millions of men a major disservice. It was basically like if an anthropologist went into a prison and tried to explain all human interaction by only observing the way the prison gangs interacted with one another. The truth is that there really are no alphas. There's no betas, there's no deltas, none of these designations are real. And while there are men that get more sex than others, sure, the reason for this can't be explained away by some sort of invisible hierarchy that controls everything. Still, the concept caught on because magazines like Playboy, Esquire, they smelled money. So over the next 30 years, people were more than happy to produce all these books, articles, and tapes telling lovelorn men how they could be more alpha to get women. As it turns out, the entire time that this was going on, poor Mac was trying to get his publisher to actually stop releasing The Wolf. He was just too embarrassed by all the faulty science that it contained. But the publisher wasn't interested, and they kept putting the book out year after year after year. Why would they stop? They were making way too much money off the millions of people who suddenly found themselves completely obsessed with the alpha male concept. Now don't worry, we're going to get to the sigma male in just a minute. However, in order to understand what the sigma male is, you need to understand where he came from. Okay, so after a few decades of trying to become alphas, most men were finding out that doing so wasn't very easy. Now this wasn't their fault. You could no sooner turn yourself into a wizard, a Sasquatch, or anything else that doesn't exist. But there was still money to be made off insecure, sex-deprived men, and that's when the pickup artists came in. Rather than tell you how to be an alpha, these guys were going to tell you how to act like one. This was pretty much the first gamification of dating, and it completely exploded into American culture at the time. Gamification was already everywhere, and men who couldn't get sex were thrilled at the idea of creating an avatar that could. And the pickup artists were here to help us design that avatar. Now, the whole premise of the pickup artist game was that any man could sleep with women, not just by dressing and acting a certain way, but by using specific systems. These systems largely consisted of repeating the same processes and techniques over and over and over again until the desired result was achieved. So terms like peacocking and negging, they quickly entered the American vernacular, and even the lowliest betas, armed with feathered fedoras, found themselves confidently marching out to the clubs. But pickup artistry didn't really last that long. In fact, it only lasted about half a decade or so. Now, why did this fad disappear so much faster than that whole alpha transformation trend of the previous 3 decades? 2 words: the internet. You see, despite books, television shows, and billions of dollars in revenue, the whole pickup artist culture fell flat because it simply didn't work. And for the first time, large groups of men could talk to other men online and figure out that they'd been scammed. Now, this might seem like a good thing, but it kind of depends. You see, pickup artistry was the first dating technique to assume that all male and female interaction is guided by set principles. Now, remember how I mentioned that it gamified dating? Well, the principles it established were not unlike a video game's physics engine. The tricks it promoted to get women to sleep with you were not unlike cheat codes you could enter to alter those principles. Only instead of getting infinite lives or unlimited ammo, you were getting, you get it. But unlike the alpha culture, which made getting more women the goal, pickup culture treated women like a point system. Just like gold coins or rupees in video games, They were emotionless commodities to be obtained, used, and discarded. Of course, in the real world, none of us are NPCs waiting to react to the right stimuli, and neither are women. This just simply doesn't work. When the pickup artist went away, it left millions of disillusioned men behind, and they needed a way to explain why their efforts had failed. Now, whatever their specific reaction, all the men came away with one new unified belief, and that is that alphas are born alphas. You can't simply become one. At best, you could maybe hit the gym to look more like one or attempt to ape their look, approach, and actions, but you couldn't actually turn yourself into one. Now, this is significant because what was initially about transforming yourself into a better man instead became about loathing your place in the hierarchy and hating the people at the top. Suddenly, the Chads and the Stacys of the world, they weren't the creme de la creme of sexual attraction. Instead, they were just vapid morons, bumping uglies with the sole purpose of making the world a worse place to live in for the rest of us. And if a man wasn't getting laid, it was because he was naturally and incurably inferior. These men became social and genetic spectators to the sexual fulfillment of their betters. As you might expect, feeling this way about yourself is not particularly healthy, and it only leads to tons of resentment. It was around this time that the alpha and beta dynamic was actually expanded to include gammas, deltas, and omega males, and all these other different designations that had never existed before. Suddenly, people on the internet were just creating new tiers of men and women based only on their likelihood of having sex. They were then attempting to dictate who was most likely to have sex with whom. Now, this took the whole gamification aspect to the next level and virtually removed all human thought and emotion from the entire dating process. Oh, so you're a beta? You're doomed to marry a tier 2 or a tier 3 woman. Our lives were suddenly an MMORPG, with the top dungeons reserved only for those with the right abilities, weapons, and team members. Then, out of seemingly nowhere, the Sigma male appeared. Now, Sigma males are not only brand new, but unlike any other type of man that had existed over the past 50 or 60 years, they exist completely outside the socio-sexual hierarchy. And as if to come full circle back to David Meck's book, the primary way of describing these males was lone wolves. Now, Sigma males are often described as men who like to keep to themselves and do their own thing. They're educated, they're naturally intelligent, but they're also quiet and reserved. While they can be dominant if they want, they prefer not to be. Instead, they use their superior intellect to get what they want, and that includes women. But the most important thing that we all need to know about this new breed of man, they are equal to alphas. In fact, many writers, podcasters, and bloggers now argue that the rare and elusive Sigma male is not only the introvert version of an alpha, but that the sense of mystery that he creates through his introversion actually makes him the most attractive type of man. Someone women literally can't resist. If you Google Sigma male, you'll find tons of articles, podcasts, and websites, some of which are by major news outlets, discussing this new male archetype. And if you've been paying attention, you might be able to guess what's coming next. Here's a little refresher for you. This whole thing started with the alpha concept. It was a research mistake so monumental that the person who literally wrote the book on the subject has been trying to get it unpublished for decades. Still, magazines saw something they could easily package and sell. And since some men do indeed have more sex than others, the whole illusion seemed just real enough to convince millions of men that they too could become an alpha. They just had to try hard enough. Now, after 30 or so years of this, people got wise. So next came pickup artistry. This was a far more shameless cash grab, but it still worked. It just didn't work as long. Now, the game was that you could no longer become an alpha, but you could borrow their characteristics long enough to have sex with women. This too was exposed to be complete BS, but where the men who failed the alpha test were able to cut their losses and move on, the men who failed at pickup artistry were left completely disillusioned and often more than a little bit angry. This led to the creation of this socio-sexual hierarchy that we deal with now. This is like a detailed pyramid of male and female value. The hierarchy was men trying to figure out why nothing they tried worked with women. And since there was clearly nothing wrong with them, they decided that those people at the top must be genetically programmed to get more sex. Each descending level was more and more likely to spend their lives forever alone. This removed mobility and motivation to change from the equation. It stated that you simply were what you were. Now let's assume it's 2021, and you want to sell self-improvement to men who now don't want to change. So how would you go about profiting from them? The answer is, you tell them they're already perfect. It's the world that just needs to realize it. So here's what I haven't told you yet. I haven't told you what my background is and why I'm even putting this up. The truth is that I have been a marketing professional for over 25 years. And man, does the Sigma male concept reek of another scam. What the Sigma actually is it's a marketing invention worthy of Don Draper himself. The message is just because you can't become an alpha doesn't mean you can't get women. In fact, you might already be the most attractive type of man in the world. Actually, you know what? You probably are. I mean, are you quiet, reserved, a loner? Do you prefer to let women chase you rather than chase them? Are you smart, introspective, and could care less whether or not you live and die alone? Great news! You're a Sigma, the world's most attractive male. You see, this time, the people who profit off male insecurity are well aware that they can no longer sell you on becoming an alpha. So now they're selling you on the idea that you're already better than an alpha. You just never realized it. It's pretty convenient, don't you think? A loner, introspective, intelligent, this is how most modern men would describe themselves. After all, we've been isolated by technology, inundated with information, and suffered from a lack of social interaction so long, human relationships have never been harder for us. Even those so-called alphas are trading in their jockstraps for Fortnite, Counter-Strike, and WoW. But grifters got a grift, and all that was left was a few 100 million smart, shy, and socially inexperienced men who no longer saw any value in changing. So just like that, the exact same people who were telling you you could never get women were telling you that you're the most desirable man on the planet. Or at least you might be. You see, there's no point to all this without a profit motive. In this case, the profit motive is explaining to you how being a Sigma works. Remember, it's a brand new concept. It was just invented. And even though you most likely already are one, you still need to hone those Sigma skills, right? That's where the magazine articles, the blogs, the books, and the 40 hours of YouTube Sigma affirmations come in. Look it up, that's a real thing. It's not even a particularly well thought out scam. Mostly, it's effective because there's nowhere to go from here. If you're on the Sigma train, this might seem like your last chance to make it. And if it fails, the only possible reason is that it's the world that's wrong, not you. Can you see how inherently toxic that is? Do you see that this is all just another form of gamification? Another cheat code that isn't going to work because life is not, in fact, a game? Hopefully you see what's actually missing from this entire concept. What's been missing since the very first alpha male article was published back in the 70s. What's missing is women. Their feelings, their opinions, their desires, and their own individual thoughts on what they're looking for in a mate. Remember when I said that there are always going to be men that have more success with women than others? I guarantee they didn't become successful with women by being afraid of them. They certainly didn't get there by resenting them. In the end, no man becomes successful in this part of his life by commodifying women, gamifying sex, or trying to use some cheat code to make girls like them. Because you can't cheat your way to becoming better at a skill, which is what social interaction is. If you want to become more socially adept and likable, the only thing you can do is practice and learn. It's like how there's no cheat code to becoming totally jacked. You either go to the gym or you stay skinny. And there's no cheat code to becoming great at guitar either. You either practice till your fingers bleed or you don't get better. So I promise you, there's no cheat code to becoming more appealing to women. You simply work at it or you don't. It's your choice, but I can tell you that nothing you could say to a girl could possibly be as embarrassing as saying that same exact thing while wearing a fedora. The world, technology, and popular culture created the men we are today. It's the grifters that created the Sigma male, and they need to maximize their profits. When they're done, they'll market to whatever type of man is left over. So these guys will never tell you that there really are no alphas or betas, and definitely no Sigmas, because they make too much money telling you that there are. Look, part of becoming an adult is facing certain realities about life. One is that you aren't entitled to female attention. But that doesn't mean that you're doomed to never have it. What you need to be doing is nurturing an appreciation and an understanding of women. And the sooner you rip the Band-Aid off and realize that you aren't actually owed anything, the sooner you can become a better, more confident man. Trust me, that's going to get you a lot further than any Sigma male affirmations ever could. Now, I'm going to be posting a lot of videos like this in the future. It's something I really believe in, and I hope you'll come to trust what I have to say. But that's it. There's no links, there's no visit my website, no buy my book. If you want to learn more, you can just stay here and watch the videos. In the end, I'm not here to sell you anything but the truth.